Hi there. Happy Saturday. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Adelita Grijalva, and this is a Plática with Adelita, and we're talking about civic engagement and family tradition. And so I was trying to figure out a way to, like, who could I have that could talk about the importance of getting involved in your community and family tradition. And the only other family that kind of resembles the situation that we've been going through in the Grijalva household is the Ekkstroms. And so I wanted to welcome Dan Eckstrom. Dan says that he's a retired elected official, but I just don't know that that's ever going to be true. He served as in South Tucson for 17 years and the Board of Supervisors for 15 years, and has continued to help and be very involved politically. His daughter, Jennifer, was either on the council or the mayor of South Tucson for 18 years. She's the youngest elected official in Arizona, a distinction that that's just gonna be that. Unless we lower the voting age, Jennifer is always gonna be the youngest elected official. And then she left as the mayor of South Tucson and has continued to serve in the Board of Supervisors as the Chief of Staff for Ramon Valadez in District 2. So the same area of South Tucson, and I think that's great. And then my dad, Congressman Grijalva, who's very busy doodling.
No, I'm not.
He served on the board, on the TUSD governing board from 1974 to 88, and then for 13 years on the Board of Supervisors, and currently continuing to serve as our representative in Congress for 18 years. And I am on the TUSD governing board and have been on the board for 18 years. So we all have collectively hundreds of years of experience on running campaigns and getting people excited to vote. So I wanted to kind of start off with that general introduction, but I wanted to we're talking about civic engagement and family tradition because we have a lot of people who don't have the tradition in their households about voting. It's not something that people talk about a lot, and some people even say, well, I don't really want to get involved in all the politics stuff. So how would you address someone like that? How would you respond to that, Dan?
Well, I was very fortunate. I've lived in South Tucson all my life. I live about 4 blocks from where I was born. In fact, when you look out my window, you can see my first grade classroom at Mission View School. So I don't travel too far. But I first got involved in politics because of my mother, who was helping some candidates for the South Tucson Council. I must have been in the 7th grade. And from there, I caught the bug. And I got involved in campaigns while I was at our mutual high school, Pueblo High School, a good warrior. I was in active. And it was funny because in my senior year, I graduated in 1965. Many of the people that knew me would write in my yearbook and saying, hey, you're going to be the mayor of South Tucson. And, that was furthest from my mind, but eventually it happened. But from a family standpoint, not only did I pick it up from my mom and dad, my mother and father lived right where the freeway went through in South Tucson, I-10, and people were stealing land from the Yaqui community. My parents actually did a class action and sued the state to make sure that they got paid. So I witnessed all of that. So it was only natural that as I became involved, that I would do things and encourage people to get involved. That's how I started.
Dad, Raúl, answer the same question.
And when Dan was talking about how many times our respective public lives have intersected, me and Dan and I, when he was mayor of South Tucson, as he was coming on, I had a community center that I was running for the Methodist Church at the time, right across from where Semolina Library is now. And that's when I ran into Dan Eckstrom many years. We were both very young men at the time. And then I ran for school board in 1972 to make a statement. I got into elected politics to make a statement. And and I got my butt whooped all over town, including my own precinct. I lost to a gentleman by the name of Solang Tom. And then in 1974, we decided to approach it differently and run a campaign, and we tried to learn what that was. And we won by like 280 votes out of 80,000 cast. And so that was it. That's how I got started in TUSD and became a board member there. Then had the opportunity to run for Board of Supervisors. And all this time, it was all local offices because, as Dan knows, you have a family. I mean, it's not like these jobs don't pay enough for you to be able to help out with the cost of a family. So you have to basically stay in town. You can't afford to get on the bus and go up to Phoenix for the state legislature or any of that stuff. You had to be here where you could work. And I ended up working for the city of Tucson for a long time, running a Pueblo neighborhood center. Then the opportunity was while I was on the board, came up for a new seat that had been redistricting at Pastor's district, had gone back up more to Maricopa. I ran. I was very fortunate, thanks to the help of a lot of people, including Dad. Here we are, and after all this time, I continue to have the good fortune of getting, keeping this job that I have. But yeah, that's basically the career in a nutshell.
So Jennifer, we saw our dads go through all of this stuff. I know that we've, can probably commiserate on the things that drive us the craziest, especially when people are talking about our dads like they know who they are, or saying kind of lies about them. I always feel like I can deal with people saying things about me. I have a really hard time when they say things about my dad or my family. And so knowing all of that, you decided to run for office and be the youngest elected official. Why did you do that?
I think it was just a natural thing for me to want to do. Ever since I can remember, I was involved in some sort of election. So whether it was Congressman Pastor, my dad's, Ramon Valadez running for state rep and Senate, I always was doing something. So it just seemed like a natural fit. And really, when I said it out loud, I was probably just joking, but my dad took it and said, well, let's just do it. And we did. And so, 18 years into the job, I was still going strong, but, I wanted to start a family, and that's where my path took me. So, and I agree with you. When people talk about my family, I do make sure to say something, and because they don't know my dad, and for as much stuff as they say, the good that he's done in the community will always be remembered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think that there are very few. I was trying to think of how many daughters actually have dads who are elected officials. You have a lot of sons, not a lot of daughters, and I think that the experience that you had with having to make a choice, deciding to make a choice, like I want to have a family, and so I'm going to step away from this, is something that a lot of women have to deal with, where men don't. Because my dad was in office, running for, and I was tiny. I was born in 1971, so I have pictures of us marching in a stroller and that kind of thing. But I don't think that many people ever ask male elected officials, hey, how are you going to dedicate time to your family, kind of thing. So what is your...
when somebody had said something about, well, why aren't you spending your time with your family, Adelita? And that really ticked me off. And, our dads don't have the same scrutiny as we do. And so I remember when I stepped away, somebody said, oh, this must be for something else. It's not because of this. And, these are my choices, and this is what I'm going to do. And you don't know. So you're right.
You don't know. Right. And so what is the first memory that you have of voting, Jennifer? Or even the idea of voting?
Well, we were lucky enough that all we had to do was walk across the street to Mission View and cast our votes there. So I remember the hardwood Mission View floors, and, going with my mom and dad and my brother and I, and we would go into the booth, and I would be like, Dad, because you had to punch it at that time. I'd be like, can I punch this? And, he's like, oh, yeah. But no, I never got to punch it. And I would go with my dad, and my brother would both my mom and, you know, it was
Dan.
a thing. And it was cool because I was like, you would walk up to the election worker and be like, oh, this is Dan Eckstrom and Alice Eckstrom. And it was just really cool. So my youngest memory is that. And it was always, you know, this was your duty. You have to vote.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Adelita, can I say something?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you.
Let me ask Dan too. You know, one of the things, and you mentioned, you know, reactions to people saying stuff about your fathers, that, you know, and it's usually, you know, the source is usually someone that you're having a political difference with, or quite frankly, somebody that you've already beaten, to be honest with you, in a political campaign. But nevertheless, you hear this stuff, and especially nowadays, it's really ugly and it's personal and etc. And your reaction. Let me tell you, from the perspective of a dad, you know, sometimes I felt that, you know, that things that I would do, that things that disagreed with me, people that maybe were opposed to what I was doing or not doing, that those kinds of things would fall on you, that you all suddenly inherited those things regardless, and that there was always a question about the legitimacy of you being in a position, whether it's the school board, or now that you, God willing, you're running for the Board of Supervisors and you win this one, that somehow, you know, that this is not something that as a woman and as the daughter of somebody, that you didn't earn. And I think that always bugs me probably a lot. And I don't know if Dan has the same sense of what I'm trying to talk about. I didn't say it well, but it's
no, I think it's true, because anytime you're in public life, you're like an open book. People can take shots at you. I mean, look at what we have running our nation right now. Lies and half-truths. And, you know, especially when you're set in trying to get things done, particularly for people who are disadvantaged. You know, Raúl and I represented the two poorest districts in Pima County, and we had a fight to get money to help, and we did. And then we did a lot of things that people wonder why we did it. And then as a result, mostly on development issues, people would take a shot at us. Okay. Now, I didn't always vote with your dad 100%. He didn't vote with me 100%. But you know, the times though, when we voted together, we were strong. I mean, we started the neighborhood reinvestment program. We started getting bond funds and sharing it with local jurisdictions. And that had never happened before. We fought to keep Keno Hospital, okay? And yet there were people who lived on the other side of town who were critical of us because they didn't know what we were doing, and they didn't have a notion or any idea of what the communities we represented were. The one thing that I always remember is that you always had to get 3 votes on the Board of Supervisors. And sometimes you had to work on it. The one thing, Raúl, you probably remember this. You came to me, there was a lady that needed a heart transplant, and Access didn't want to give it to her. Raúl said, will you help me? So we went around trying to get a 3rd vote. We actually went to a guy who wasn't even our friend. And then remember, we sued the state, Raúl, and now they have heart transplants, I think.
Access. Yep.
So I mean,
we are getting, people are very interested in this conversation, which I'm very excited about. And so one of the questions actually comes from our friend Kathy Dong, Eva Dong's daughter. And thanks for watching, Kathy. She says, I've always wondered this, passing along our values to our children about civic engagement is a beautiful quality. How do you navigate something that should be celebrated that is often minimized and belittled in one comment as being part of the machine, especially when you love your community so much and you serve the very same community together? And I think that that's really interesting, because I was reading an article about both when when you left the South Tucson position and, did exactly what you did, explained why. What I thought was interesting is they said, is the machine dead or something? It was like some comment. And I always wondered, like, why is it that a group of people working together it's fine, a description as a machine, but it does, you're totally belittling any other contribution. Do you want to address that, Jennifer?
Well, I'm proud to be a part of the Eckstrom machine, whatever that is, because my dad just described what the machine has done. And if it wasn't for Raúl and my dad, a lot of things wouldn't be happening in this community, bottom line, whether you want to hear that or not. It is belittling to be called the machine or whatever. I just wonder what the difference is between a daughter and a father machine and then a brother and a sister machine. I mean, why is that so different? So while it is a little unfortunate, I don't mind it. And the machine will never be dead because we have Zoe, we have Aiden, and just so many things that we've done. So, if you want the Eckstrom machine to be gone, it's never going to be gone. And that's how I see things. And I'm sure that's how you see things. And I'm proud to be a part of the Grijalva machine too. So that's where it is. And that's where we stand. And while it may seem belittling, it's okay with me. It really is.
What I think is interesting. Go ahead, Dad.
I think it's ideas. I think Jennifer was saying that it's, and I think when you're involved in electoral politics, which is different from other community-based politics and organizations, when you're involved in what we do, the four of us do, electoral politics, it is, it's also about winning campaigns. And when you win campaigns, there's a certain level of resentment from the people that don't win the campaign. And that's always there. But I think it's about ideas, and to get people together around an idea, around a set of values, around things that they want to do together. And for in trying to personalize it, people call it a machine and put a name on it. I've been through a lot of things that Dan has done and that Jennifer's done, from passing out 10,000 toys on Christmas that they used to do all the time, to making sure that everybody at the Sedley homes voted. I learned from that. I learned that, we're going to make sure that our elderly vote, and we multiply that in a bigger way with all the homes, with all the areas. And I those are good things. That's about a shared value. I think sometimes a name is put on it just so you can minimize the fact that you actually have a collection of people that are on the same path. And I think that probably bothers people more than anything else,
So, Dan, you mentioned your first memory of voting was really with your parents, and your parents both really getting involved and encouraging people to run and vote. Dad, what was your first memory of voting?
My mom was political. My dad, not that much. And my mom could vote. My dad couldn't. And once, we were old enough to make sure that we got her there, she voted all the time. And, but my point being that was a voting experience. I think I got into like issues and education and those, and I saw electoral politics as a way to make change. And so I kind of concentrated on that. My first experience with voting was handing out leaflets for Mo Udall, handing out leaflets for Hector Morales when I was in high school, doing that because it was the thing to do. And I think the biggest impression was, where the Silver Saddle is. What was it? What was the name of the hotel?
The Pickwick.
Yeah, the Pickwick. Me and Vic were coming back from downtown. We were looking for old roller skates to get the wheels and make go-karts, And so we're walking back from downtown, and there was all these people picketing the Pickwick because they wouldn't allow African Americans in there. And so we stopped and listened to it. And they talked us into marching around with them. They explained to us what it was. And honestly, that for me was kind of an awakening about, oh God, this is what they're doing, and what they're doing is a good thing. But I remember the Pickwick, and we were walking home, and we stopped for a picket thing, and the pastor and the honcho at St. Philip's pulled us over and talked to us, and that was it. At least I got a little bit, not only curious, but a little bit hooked on what they were doing.
So we have a question from our friend Benny Gomez, who says, how are you teaching your kids about the importance of voting? Or how did you teach your kids about the importance of voting? And do you involve them when you fill out your ballot, watch elections results with them? And who wants to take that question? I think we touched on it a little bit.
I'll take that. Let's see. When I voted for Hillary Clinton, there's a picture of me and Zoe voting together our mail-in ballot. She was only 1.5 at that time, but I wanted her to see that I'm voting for the first, woman president. And when she accepted the nomination, we watched it together, and that was really cool. And this year we did the same thing. She asked me, Mom, this is how you vote? And I tried to explain to her that, usually we go out to the polls and vote, but because of what's going on now, this is how we're voting. And she said, oh, okay. And, she understands a little bit. So I'm just trying to drive that home, that it's important to vote. It's important to make your voice be heard.
Yeah. I remember my Nana would always talk about the importance of voting, and she'd kind of tease my tata because he couldn't vote. So she had to vote for him because he couldn't vote. But what I thought was always interesting is that she really wanted to understand every vote. Like, she's not going to vote no on something if she didn't know. And I really appreciate that, because some people will look and say, is your dad going to put out his slate card of like how to vote on these things? And it's one of those things where it's a catch-22, because once you say something, people want you to justify it, which I totally understand, but I always appreciate when people are really involved. Sadly, though, a lot of people are not. And so how do we get the people that just kind of don't see this as voting is just not their thing? I've heard that a couple of times. Voting is just not my thing. Like, how do we convince people that this has to be everybody's thing? Because otherwise you're allowing other people that vote to speak for you. Like this, you're letting them decide your life.
Dan, look what's happening now. Here we are talking to each other online. I mean, if there's any example about why voting matters, look at the situation that we find ourselves in with this pandemic. We had to isolate each other. It's affected almost everything, and we have an idiot that in the White House that is making the situation worse. Yeah, that's why it's important to vote. I mean, it's kind of like your life, and this is a good example. If you just look around our everyday right now, it's I don't know, Dan. We've been around a while, but I've never encountered something this is profound and this heavy than what we're dealing with right now in this community and across a lot of communities. This virus is going to change us, and hopefully it's a good way, but it's already changed us a lot, because it's just different. And if there's any reason people should vote, they should just look around them. Now they should see this is why you need to vote, so that you can change the situation we're in.
It's interesting to watch the phenomenon, how every one of us have different approaches to how we used to do our grassroots campaigns, because a lot of our campaigns were grassroots oriented. That meant we went out to communicate with the voters, as opposed to depending on mass media, and now they call it social media, advertising. We actually, mainly because most of our campaigns didn't raise enough money. Although your dad used to joke at me because he knew that I like to raise money, and I still do once in a while.
You do.
As a matter of fact, those of you that haven't contributed to Adelita's campaign, please go online. She still needs some help.
Damn.
But see, and the reason I do that is because people don't know this, Adelita, but I chaired one of your school board campaigns. Do you remember?
I do.
And then I remember, Jennifer, when you ran, Raúl endorsed you. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it's amazing how things like this happen. But I think what we have to do, we just have to stick to what has gotten us to where we're at right now and keep doing it. There's going to be changes. I don't understand. I mean, you've got me on this thing today. A few days ago, I'd never done anything like this. And so it's something new. And you know what? Actually, I kind of like it. And I you know, maybe we're going to have to do something regularly or find some other thing because, you know, I think it's a way to communicate and to let people know that, I mean, they're looking at us right now, fathers and daughters, okay? Some people know us, some people think they know us, and some people don't know us. But this is a good way. And I tell you what, I really want to thank you guys for inviting us into your privacy of your homes, wherever you're at right now, watching. And, you know, I'm looking forward to this. It gives a viejito like me something to do.
See, Dan, you're going to be a pro in no time. I have no doubt. So what I think is interesting is that when you're trying to talk, because I know that all of us have tried to talk to people about running for office. If we think that they have a strong voice and they are really articulate and say things that other people need to hear and that aren't being said. I know that when I graduated from high school, my dad did a doodle that said Adelita Grijalva for TUSD. I was 17. I'm like, I'm not committing to anything at all. And then when I ran, they said, we don't want the girl on the board at this time. And I was 31. And so one of the things that Patrick Robles spoke about or asked a question is, what's it like to be a young woman of color in the political atmosphere? And what was your hardest decision? And that is a question to you, Jennifer, and me. And he writes, Grijalva and Eckstrom superfan. I'm like, Patrick? So go ahead, Jennifer.
So I was 18 years old. That was a long time ago.
That's all.
It was 10 years ago. So I think in terms of being a woman of color, it wasn't that bad for me because it was South Tucson, and South Tucson has seen, you know, Latinos be on the council. The hardest thing for me was being 18 and having to talk to people and make decisions for people who are like 10, 20, 30 years older than you. And I do know that a lot of the council used to called me Mija at the time. And it's just funny because I grew up with them and I knew them and I loved them and they respected me, and that was cool. It was the outside world who didn't respect me, who didn't think an 18-year-old knew what they were doing. It's really hard because you think that you have longtime family friends, and when they come out against you, that's the hardest thing. And I think and I'm not saying that it's a good thing, what I've taken away is I don't trust a lot of people, and so that's hard. But I got through it, and ultimately, I do think people learned to respect me. I did earn that respect because I was involved and I listened to people. That's the most important thing. I listened to every single thing that came my way because that's the way that you get to know people and that's the way you get to know your community. Being mayor is a different story. You know, I could go on and on about this, but I think I was lucky because there wasn't social media. It wasn't as big as at that time. So I think things would have been a lot different and it would have been a lot harder. My mom always told me she didn't want me to do it because she didn't want me to get old too fast. So I always maintain that having fun and being young. And that was important to me because it was important to my mom. So I did try to do that and have a little fun once in a while.
Yeah, I think it's interesting though to have a dad that is in elected office, because I remember being a student in TUSD and my dad's like, if I have to show up to school for anything other than you being on honor roll, we're gonna have some problems. It's like, I'm on the board, you can't act like a fool at school. And I remember that like in my brain. And so I think about that with my own kids when we're talking about stuff like, you better be doing your best. Seriously, it's embarrassing. I don't want, you do what you can. And I think it's hard when you're a parent looking at the stuff that your kids have to go through because of, and you'll see it more as Zoe gets older, because it's just started popping up with my middle schoolers, that when their friends realize that, oh wait, that's Adelina's mom, but she also does this other stuff, or that's Lito's mom, but she's also, isn't that her name, like on the side of the street? I think that's when for them it gets a little more real. And what I thought was really interesting is when I was not going to run for my 5th term, I wasn't going to run. And I told the kids, I don't think I'm going to run. And they're like, what are you going to do? Like, what do you mean what am I going to do? I'm going to hang out with you guys. They're like, really? Like, that's all? Like, you hang out. Like, why don't you go do something else? Which I think is interesting, because my dad was gone. Like, they had meetings every Tuesday when they were on the board. And I remember those memories. And I was trying to like shield my kids, thinking I'm gone too much. And they're like, you have to do that stuff. And I think that's really cool when they understand that the job that you do, because you have to do it because nobody else is doing it. I think that's pretty cool. Watching my son have a conversation with my dad about Black Lives Matter and the importance of it. I'm like, you're 9 and you get that? That's pretty cool, because a lot of kids don't. So I think that while there are pros and cons to, being involved in politics, I think it really opens our kids' eyes to things aren't fair. And we have to get over thinking that life is supposed to be fair, because it's not going to be.
Right.
We have a question from Anama.
Oh,
She said, Anama, she wants to know what our favorite campaign tradition is. Dan, you want to take that one? Everyone will answer it, but I'll mix it up.
well, our favorite campaign tradition was door-to-door campaigning, which now during the COVID situation has just put an end to it. I know that you have come up with some no contact lit drops, but knocking on doors and talking to people. And I think a lot of people, Raúl mentioned that a lot of times people would be critical of us because they didn't know what we did to get elected. And they thought it was just, they didn't know that we actually worked hard at it. I mean, you look at people who have been involved. I mean, Raúl has people who have been with him for a lifetime, okay? And I've had similar type people like that who have helped me, and yet, not having the ability to knock on doors and to go to someone's house and talk to them, I think has been difficult. But there's so many different ways now, and I know that some of the younger voters, I'm thinking in terms more of our communication with some of the older voters that vote a lot, and so that's one of the traditions that we had, and you'd have somebody, well, Eckstrom, what kind of name is that? And I said, well, I'm a Swedish meatball. Well, I'm really very fortunate that I had some beautiful parents, okay, and I grew up, like I say, living in South Tucson, Barrio Libre, and just being part of it, okay, and I still am. But I think that's the one tradition that for us meant a lot. And then we had our own ways of getting people. We had our own groups of people that went out and got people to support us.
Yeah, that is, I mean, we do miss that a lot. Dad, what's your favorite campaign tradition?
It's post-campaign tradition. It's around the holidays. It's Christmas. You've gone through the campaign. You've done it. You've won. You've been sworn in. You've done all the stuff, and then comes the holidays. It comes Christmas, and hopefully families will be able to get together safely somehow. I don't know if that's going to be entirely possible this year, but to me, that was always it was a post thing, because that where you kind of reflected on everything that had happened for the last 90 crazy days, and then you start looking forward, and you have your family around you. That to me, that is, it's a personal tradition. I don't think I share it with everybody, but I see Christmas as like the start of a new chapter on something. So that's I kind of look forward to that.
Nice. Jennifer?
Oh, my favorite is watching the results come in.
Yeah, that's fun too.
Yeah, I really enjoy that, because you're with everyone who supported your campaign, and you kind of commiserate, and then you watch the fruits of your labor and people that you love and support win. And I love that part.
We do this on election day, and I think my dad started it probably because my nana lit a bunch of velas all the time. But we go to San Javier and light candles on election day. And it's interesting because my dad has talked to other people about it. And then Richard Elias started doing it. Andres does it. And so what was crazy about COVID this year is we couldn't go into San Javier. When you go to the front of the church and to the left, that little capilla, I don't know the word. Why am I I can't remember the name, but anyway, where they have all the candles, that was closed. And so all I did was light a candle near it. It's like some sort of tradition. So I hope that we can get back to that. But that for me is one of that's like okay, we're almost to the end. And then getting together here at the headquarters has always been one of my favorite things. And the primary night was kind of weird because it was like this, we were on this exact platform talking to people, but other people were watching, and then people would send me videos of them getting the results this way. So we're gonna try to do something, but I think that to me, or the election night is fun. And I remember when my dad ran for Congress, there were how many people running? 7 first time? It was a lot of people. And so we got
100.
It felt like a lot. I thought it was going to be a super long night. And so I was standing in front of Wakefield, handing out little flyers, reminding people to vote. One of the other candidates was there with their daughter. So we were competing for no, I got this one kind of thing all day. And it rained. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go take a shower, take a deep breath. And then we're going to go to the headquarters. And my mom calls me and says, get down here. I'm like, everything just closed. I just got out of the shower. He's like, you got to get down here. I'm like, are the results back? I was all worried that they weren't going to be good. She's like, your dad kicked butt. I was like, what? Hang on. Let me go down there. That was really fun. And I think those celebrations are great. Adam Reagan is asking a question. As a teacher, I'm curious to know what is some advice each of you would give to youth today about getting involved? Any words of wisdom that might help them take a leap to get in the fight? Dad, you want to take that first stab?
I think overall that a little civic literacy I think is important, and I think schools need to do more of that. What all these things that we value are. What is the Constitution? What is community? What is voting? How laws are made? It sounds so simple, but I think part of the problem is we have to have some civic literacy. People are illiterate about what that process is, and so you allow other misinformation to inform them of what it is, and it's usually wrong. I was going to say that I think both of you, Jennifer and Adelita, should be very proud. I mean, in a sense, in electoral politics, and you running for office and winning and being successful at it, you're also pioneering and setting a different tone. I don't think that the points that Jennifer made about her coming up as a woman and a woman of color, that while those things are still there, unfortunately, I think that in politics, at least in electoral office, you guys were part of a group here in this part of the community that broke some of those ceilings for women of color, and I think that's been good. And you can see by the people around us now that that was a good. The other women that have been elected of color, that has been a good example that you set, and you should be proud of that as well.
Thanks. Dan, do you want to take that one?
Well, I think the civic part of it in classes, and then I think organizations have to get engaged. I get emails from a group that works with nonprofit groups. It's teaching them how to become more involved in the political process. They have to be real careful to maintain a protection of their nonprofit status. But then there's other things way back in the old days that we used to do. How many can remember when we actually used to do training to teach people how to conduct a campaign other than doing social media? Mm-hmm. Raúl, I don't know if you remember, but back when you ran in 2002, your dear wife, Mona, came to a seminar that I was putting on at the Sam Lena Library for LULAC and for the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement on conducting a grassroots campaign. And she brought along with her Michelle Crow. And they came to the class. And I don't remember, I've only done those, but it's no different. And I think we need to find people who are willing to do that. And I realize now social media is different, but there's ways to intertwine that. But we used to teach the basics of it. And it was funny because when Michelle, I think she ran your first campaign, didn't she, Raúl?
The combination, Anna, Ed, Glenn, everybody.
Oh yeah. No, I know, but she was working in your office there, no.
Yeah, doing volunteer work.
Glenn and Anna, oh yeah, man, those are your life partners there. But doing things like that and trying to those skills, and then in the process, what will happen is, I see Patrick Robles on today. Ask him how many times I call him and say, "Hey, Patrick, how do I do this?" And I think it's important that we built that kind of interaction between old guys like me and some of the younger crowd, and we can learn from each other.
Good point.
Yep. Jennifer?
So I was lucky enough to have a great history teacher in my years at St. Ambrose School. Ms. Brewer, she taught us everything from the Constitution to, the Civil War, like just everything that I love about history is because of her. And so I think if you're that teacher to teach those basic things to your kids, they're going to always remember that. And so also, I think we need to look to the younger generation, Patrick Robles, Eddie Baron. These kids are showing us how to do things, and I'm in awe of them every day. I see them on Instagram doing all of these things, and I'm just like, where do you find the time? You're going to school, but they do find the time because they do want to get involved. And I think it's important that it comes from your teacher. If it's not going to come from your family, it should come from your teachers. And so if you want to be that teacher, you should do it. And Adam, I have every faith in you that's what you're doing.
Yeah. I think that what's really interesting is that you have, you have this fine line that boards, especially one like TUSD, where when we were doing Mexican American studies and education projects, that kind of stuff, they were saying, you're trying to indoctrinate our children. You're trying to, and it's like, all we're doing is giving them the history, and the history is what it is. And so what has always been really frustrating for me is that, our kids always know about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, and they have a day, maybe now a week, of Martin Luther King, and they have maybe half a day with a little bit of Cesar Chavez, and that's it. I mean, unless you're doing the research yourself, unless you as a parent are showing your kids, they don't understand that this is the way it is for a lot of children, that they just don't have advantages, and you have to speak up for those who can't. And I think that that's important. And Crystal is asking a question: is what do these tatas, what ideas do you tatas have for your grandbabies as far as getting them excited and engaged? Because I think that that is a very unique relationship. It always was for me. And so to kind of watch the exchange now with my dad and the kids is it's very fascinating, I have to say. They have a lot of really high level conversations. But you know, you both have grandbabies that are all watching you and paying attention. Either one of you.
Well,
they're pretty much on their way.
Because
They're on
my
their way.
granddaughter, I only have one granddaughter, Zoe.
Right.
Zoe Alice, named after my late wife, okay? And for those of you that know me on Facebook, it's Zoe's page, okay? But, you know, it's amazing how the first political event that Zoe went to was a fundraiser at UFCW for Richard Elias. And there's a picture that we have of my daughter Jennifer handing Zoe to me so I can hold her. And guess who's in the background of the picture? Brian Flagg, Pancho Medina, Jaime Gutierrez, and Richard Elias. And it was funny because we were saying, I was telling people, oh yeah, this is Zoe's coming out party for learning politics. And we've taken her to things. And I mean, we do an annual event to raise money for scholarships. It's a pretty big time event for the Hispanic Women's Corporation. And the last one we had last November, Zoe gets up to the microphone and starts taking over. So, you know, it's things like that. And I think we owe it to the younger set to sometimes hear from us old guys. You know, we remember some things. I still remember. But
Yeah.
That was a good question, Crystal.
I think you have better memory than I do, Dan. Dad, what predictions do you have for your grandbabies? What do you think they're going to be?
I think they're all good. They're all very different, and they're very, very interesting kids, and they're going to be fascinating adults. I think the one that I think has the public service bug, you're going to be surprised. I think it's Joaquin and Belen, the two smaller ones on each side. I think they have the bug more because they ask more questions about what this. I mean, I just sense that. But you know, let me tell you a story. You know, when Mona and I were both working, I'm on the school board. You know, and it's still not the best of economic times, and I would sometimes take Raquel and Adelita with me to the school board meetings that would last forever, and they would be all bummed out and ready to cry, and oh, this is torture. And so for the life of me, Jennifer and Dan, when she said, I want to run for school board, it was the biggest surprise to me because during that period of time, she absolutely hated the idea that she would be stuck in this room while I went to a meeting. But so you never know. And I think that the grandbabies, they're on their way. I mean, how can they not? I think that's what's happening with our community as a whole. That is, as voting becomes more and more a part of our family traditions, like it is with the Eckstroms, like it is with us, then it just gets getting passed on. I think they're there already, and they're, you know, they listen to us talk, and I was cussing
when we don't realize they're listening to us.
Yeah, I was cussing out one of the commentators on Fox one day, and and Adelina was right there, and she heard me say these vile words, and then she repeated them to her mother, and her mother called me up. Adelita, Dad, you need to stop this in front of the baby, because she had said the word. And the word fit, though, but it shouldn't come out of a child's mouth. So, but I'm happy with all of them. My job is to spoil them and to do what I can to make their lives as easy as possible.
Oh my gosh. So what do you guys think? Kathy Dong asked another question about the unprecedented early returns, like the ballot returned early ballots are really high. And we saw that in the primary, like the numbers of just the volume of people that voted. So do you guys have any predictions on what that means? So far, Pima County has 75,900 ballots that have been turned in.
And each one, and FN has counted each one of those, right? Anyway,
yeah.
I
never mind.
From my vantage point, I think it's a good sign. I think all of us here are on the Biden-Harris team and on the Grijalva team, both Grijalvas, okay? And I think it's a good sign because somebody brought me a Biden-Harris sign and I put it up. They brought me those stakes, but I'm barrio, man. I put it up on my fence, okay?
Right.
So late one evening, I noticed that it was gone. So I go to my Ring doorbell and I saw that it was an older gentleman who took the sign. And I think I recognize him, but I'm not going to go look. But the funny thing is I went by his house. He has a Biden-Harris sign up there. So when you look at trying to get people to get involved, it's important that we deal with everybody because those are the ones that are going to lead us to victory. And I think the early work that we're doing is going to pay dividends. And I'm just hoping that we have a very blue evening on November the 3rd.
Yep. What do you think, Jennifer?
I think it's a good sign, but I would like to see more emergency voting places, more early voting places throughout our community. So I know Gabriela Cáceres Kelly is looking into that. That's part of her platform, and I'm glad to see that our new county recorder is going to be looking into that. I think it's important. If we're talking about civic engagement, we need to make sure that everyone in Pima County is voting and has the chance to vote.
It has access. Go ahead, Dad.
Has access to vote.
I agree with that. The bigger the turnout, the better it is for all of us. For all of us, the better it is to change the national leadership. But this race here in Arizona is going to tighten up. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be a slam dunk for the Democrats, and it's not going to be a slam dunk for Biden and Harris or even for Kelly. And so I really think that the job that we're doing in terms of making sure that those hard to get votes, the people that don't vote, the people that just registered, that we make sure they get there. Because I think we need every one of them. But it's a good sign when you have this much activity this early in the voting process. It's a really good sign. And the bigger the turnout, the better for us. But I still think it's going to be a close race here in Arizona and maybe nationally, but here in Arizona for sure. And we have got to get our vote out.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you look at some of the things that, and maybe it's just the perspective and ideology that I have, but when I look at some of the things that our president has said, that our senator has said, I just sit there and wonder how people listen to that and believe it, or just kind of blow it off like it's not that important. And what really hit me hard is when Trump is sitting here talking about he's done the best job. No other person can ever do a better job than the response for COVID. As soon as you have a loved one that has COVID, and when you hear about, a guy I went to high school with who was just in fine shape, there was nothing health-wise wrong with him. He just turned 49. and he died of COVID. It's like, so when you start to hear those stories that are really close to home and we're isolated, you know, I'm talking to my parents through a glass window for the first 3 months of this pandemic because it was so scary. I just didn't want them to come anywhere near anybody. To say that that hasn't had an impact and that you've done a great job, it's like, you know, I just don't understand how people can overlook that aside from all of the other horrible things that have been said. So I'm hopeful that we're going to have to, you know, we're going to have a good result here in Arizona, but the people that we know are going to vote for change need to actually vote. And when it comes, that what always surprises me is the day comes and we'll get calls all day long. So where do I go? I'm like, oh my gosh, it was mailed to you. Like it literally was mailed to you. So you have to like, you know, handhold through that whole process. And I'm happy to do it because if it helps, but I think that people need to understand that we need help to do that. We need to get these packets that are sitting here, need to get to someone's door. Phone calls need to be made. We're texting. I mean, everyone is doing it. Biden has their own. We're doing a coordinated here in CD3 and District 5 in Pima County. I think that it's just so important for people to get involved and start getting these people that we know are going to be supportive if they will just vote. So we are at the end. I cannot believe it. Like, see, I told you it was going to go really fast. So we have like 4 minutes left. And so I'm wondering if each of you want to do like a really quick closing. You don't have to, but if you'd like to.
I just want to thank Jennifer and Dan. It's good to see you, and I'm glad your baby's doing good, Jennifer. And now that Dan has conquered the Zoomer, we're bound to see podcast and TikTok and all kinds of stuff coming out of Dan Eckstrom.
Oh, Dan, do a TikTok. That'd be great.
Well, you know, I think this has been a great. I wasn't sure how this was going to happen. Okay, I mean, it's great because we should have been doing this a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that we can take this and build from it, even after the election is over, because there's so much the four of us have to offer. Okay, I mean, I'm not in office anymore, so I've got nothing but time. Now the rest of you work. Okay, I say I work, but you know, I think this is great, and I really feel happy that we did this. And I said, let's keep doing something like this and encourage others to do the same.
Yep,
And
I think having the conversation. Thank you, Dan. Jennifer.
I just want to encourage everybody to go out and vote. This is the most important vote of your life, of our lifetimes. We're voting for LGBTQ rights. We're voting for women's rights. We're voting for Black Lives Matter. This is what it comes down to. The pandemic to be over. This is what it comes down to. So please vote. And I just want to give a shout out to my brother. I was trying to look for pictures of just me and my dad, but it always had my brother in it. So he's like, just crop me out. I can't crop you out. So I just want to say hi to him.
Nice. I know my sisters are watching too, and they're like, ask Dad about this. I'm like, no, it's not that kind of interview. But I want to thank all of you actually for joining me. I know that it's been my dad's like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Dan's like, what are you going to ask? I'm like, we got it. This was actually as easy as I thought it was going to be. The conversation was just as easy because I am so very appreciative of all of your time. I think each one of you could have talked for the whole hour, but I think that this was a really good exchange. And it was, see, it's not as painful as I told you it was going to be fun. But I do want to say that it's so important to vote this election. I mean, we are talking about every issue that is important. And if we want a seat at the table, we have to have someone there who's willing to listen. And right now we don't. So even if you don't think that the policies of the Biden-Harris administration fit everything that you want to see, at least we will have an ear and someone to talk to and someone that will care about engaging us. And that has been evident for the last 4 years. And I cannot imagine how arrogant a Trump administration for another 4 years will be. They will just isolate completely and make decisions and not care about any of us because we were very vocal about not wanting him in office. So I hope that everyone will take this as a real push to get out and vote, come down and help. We're at 1321 West St. Mary's, so you can call 629-0050. It is the end of the campaign. We only have 16 days left, and so we really need all of your support. That is the end of the hour. Thank you all. Muchas gracias. Get out and vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.